Hello to everyone. Afghanistan, child trafficking, the stigma of humanity, and the product of war, poverty, misogyny, and injustice. Statement by the International Women's Solidarity Council. Pedophilia is one of the most terrible forms of violence against humans and a stain on the forehead of humanity. No society should fall into such poverty and helplessness that a family would trade their child to survive. It is not just the tragedy of a family or a country, it is the failure of order that has deprived man of his most basic rights. What is happening in Afghanistan today is not the result of the choice of families, but the product of the conditions that war, poverty, hunger, unemployment, and economic collapse have imposed on millions of people. Children who must have the right to education, security, play, and the future become victims of forced marriage, victims who pay the price of politics, war, and inequality. Pedophilia cannot be attributed to culture, tradition, or fate. The root of this disaster lies in the link between long wars, interventions by regional and global powers, the collapse of the economy, the lack of a social protection system, gender discrimination, and the domination of fundamentalist forces. The Taliban's return has deepened the crisis, depriving women of education, employment, and social presence, in addition to a clear violation of women's rights, has deprived millions of families of an important part of their income and economic capacity, and has spread poverty in an unprecedented way. Unprecedented way. In such circumstances, the first victims are always children and women. Along with this situation, patriarchal laws and attitudes and reactionary readings of a religion reproduce the cycle of violence by legitimizing child marriage and denying women independence. Girls are the most victims of these relationships. Children who are deprived of the right to education, choice, and future before childhood experience and become tools for survival or solving the family's economic crisis. It is neither custom nor tradition. It is a form of structural violence against children and women. However, the responsibility for the tragedy is not solely on the Taliban. The powers that have turned Afghanistan into a battlefield and a geopolitical competition for decades and have remained silent today against the hunger and suffering of millions of people also have political and moral responsibility for this situation. The International Women's Solidarity Council considers child trafficking and forced child marriage a crime against humanity and a clear violation of the fundamental rights of the child. Ending this disaster is not possible only by punishing a few brokers or a few families. As long as war, poverty, fundamentalism, gender discrimination, injustice, and economic deprivation persist, this cycle will also be reproduced. Children should not pay the price of war, poverty, power, and fundamentalism. A society whose children are sold to survive loses not only their future but also their humanity. The International Women's Solidarity Council calls on all child rights organizations, women's movements, freedom-loving institutions, and the awakened consciences of the world to take coordinated and effective action to end this disaster and defend the right of all children to a decent life, education, security, and future. Pedophilia is not an accident, it is the result of an order that turns war into business, poverty into faith, misogyny into law, and child into goods. As long as such relations govern the lives of millions of people, this catastrophe will be reproduced in various forms. International Women's Solidarity Council. Till the next video and text.